Welcome everybody to our actually first online Shiba Dog event. My name is Yuko Honda and I am the Executive Director at the Japan Society of Boston. I see many familiar faces and I see lots and lots of new faces. So thank you for joining us. I know this is early evening in Boston area, but it's probably still 3-ish in California. So I should probably say good evening, good afternoon. I'm not too sure if we have anybody joining us from Japan, but if we do have anybody joining us from Japan, ohayo gozaimasu, good morning. It is a wonderful pleasure to have all of you. We are extremely excited about this program. Like I said, this is our first online Shiba Dog event. We've always wanted to do a Shiba Dog event, and in certain ways, the online platform is enabling us to bring this to you. So with that said, chat is open. Please use chat to send us questions. We have designated quite a long time to Q&A because I'm sure you will have lots of questions about Shiba. But also we love to hear where you are joining us from. It's always a pleasure to see where you're joining us from. So let us know in chat, where are you? Where are you joining us from? Before I introduce our speaker, our main speaker of the night, just a few housekeeping items. While the speakers are speaking, we would like you to please keep your speakers off so that we can all concentrate on their presentation. Like I said, chat is open, so really send us questions in chat. And with that said, I would like to introduce you to Mary Beth Ross. She is the Director of Education at the National Shiba Club of America. And as she was sharing with us earlier, actually, this is the room that she's joining us from is not necessarily where she wanted to, but when we got together earlier, we found out that the room that she's in gives us a better audio. So we will give the stage up to Betsy in a little bit. But before we do so, our intern, Ian Malloy, is going to share with us a little bit of what Shiba means to people in Japan and how they are viewed, along with a little bit of history. So Ian, do you want to take it over from here, please?
I would love to. So let me just share my screen, have a little presentation. Alrighty, so hello everyone. I hope everyone's having a great day so far. I'm Ian Malloy with the Japan Society of Boston. I'm super excited to be able to delve into some of the general background, history, and culture of not only the Shiba Inu, but the other dog breeds of Japan as well. My friends owned a Shiba Inu named Ruby many years ago, who sadly passed away. I loved being around her so much that she got me interested in Shibas, and I hope to have one someday when I get the chance. I'm sure many of you have Shiba Inu of your own, or at least know someone who does. So, for some background, dogs have always had a very important role in Japanese culture and the people of Japan. This dates back to the earliest civilization of the Japanese, the Jomon people. To quote a study on the Asian dog breeds, it was found that, quote, dogs have always migrated with people. The earliest known migrants to Japan, the Jomon people, are thought to have brought dogs to the Japanese archipelago some 10 to 12,000 years ago. The oldest dog skeletal remains discovered in Japan date from 9,500 years before present. The Jomon people, who lived by hunting and gathering, eventually settled in regions all over in Japan, but mainly Honshu, with dogs as their companions. The Jomon civilization lasted nearly 10,000 years, from 12,000 to 2,300 years before present. And through this period, dogs seem to have been the sole domesticated animals. When their dogs died, their owners buried them. Some of these remains were of dogs roughly the size of modern Shiba Inus. Dogs are also the subject of numerous Japanese mythological stories. The Inugami, for example, is the spiritual possession of someone by the spirit of a dog. The spirits attach themselves to various items and people, such as jugs, chests, and people who are emotionally unstable. There's also a story of flying dogs where a, quote, pupil named Shujushi saw two dogs magically leap over a great ravine, and so he went to find his master Genshin. They both crossed the ravine and found a plant that had roots shaped like dogs. After boiling and consuming the roots, the master and pupil now have the power of flight. And of course, there is the Koma Inu or lion dog statues that are meant to protect parts of Shinto shrines, and the Okinawan Shisa that are meant to ward off evil spirits and bring good ones. So now we're going to look at the 6 main breeds of dogs that exist in Japan. First, there's the Shiba Inu. It is extremely popular in Japan and is quickly becoming popular in the United States. The Shiba is a national treasure of Japan's. Next, there is the Akita-ken. The Akita-ken is larger and bulkier than the Shiba, with more fur for colder environments. They can look quite similar to the Shiba Inu. Next up, we have the Hokkaido Inu. Like the Akita, the breed has longer, thicker fur for colder temperatures. They are often very devoted to their owners. The Shikoku-ken is closely related to the Shiba and is also regarded as a national treasure, but on the contrary, they are a very rare breed and often even in Japan. They are more wolf-like in their appearance, despite being friendlier than Shibas and Akitas. The Kai-ken is nicknamed the tiger dog for their distinctive, almost striped fur. They're very active and have much of their hunting spirit left intact. Lastly, there's the Kishu-ken. Like the Shikoku-ken, the Kishu are also very rare in Japan. They are similar to the Kai-ken in that they are very active and are in tune with their hunting heritage. As I mentioned earlier, Shiba Inus are considered a national treasure in Japan, being the most popular dog breed there. They are becoming ever more popular in the United States, with their rank and popularity rising by the year. Shiba Inus are loved for their bold, independent, and loyal personalities. The Shiba Inu is seen as very dignified and stands as a pillar of pride. They are known as attentive watchdogs and work very well with children. They can, however, be very cautious with strangers, which can make them great guard dogs. Of course, the Shiba is also considered adorable and majestic, so its image is used on countless items and media. The Japanese use 3 words to describe this breed. Yukan, which refers to their bold and courageous spirit. Chujitsu, which means to be good-natured and loyal. And Yojon Bukai, which means to be alert and cautious. And that is my general overview of the Inus of Japan. Make sure to keep an eye out for any Shiba Inus and their iconography wherever you go, especially when you're in Japan. I'm sure you'll be seeing more and more of them in the United States in the years to come. So now I'll pass it off to Mary Beth, who will be getting us into the nitty-gritty of Shiba Inus. Thank you.
There we go. Hi, everybody. It's so good to be here, and I'm honored to have this platform to talk about one of the most fascinating dogs I've ever owned. First of all, let me introduce Taiki. Good boy. Taiki is a very typical Shiba. I have another one named Nikki. He's more like a lab, very kind of needy, sit down to dinner and he puts his head on my lap and stuff. Taiki, he would not want to be cuddled. He doesn't like being restrained. He'll be restrained as long as it's in his pleasure, like going for a walk. But we intervened with his training early on. At about 4 months old, his owners panicked and called the breeder saying, we can't touch our dog, he tries to bite us. So I've been training Nikki since he was 4 months old. He lives around the corner from me, so I borrowed him today. And he looks like the perfect citizen, doesn't he? But before I could get him on the exam table and put him into a downstay, or he's on the grooming table rather, he did the zoomies for about 15 minutes around the house. And once that was out, and I pretended I was going to take him for a walk with a leash, He let me catch him. So here we are, looking thoroughly obedient. So I'm presuming that this audience is a mix, mostly a mix of people who just love this breed. They may have one, they may have had one when they were young, they may be interested in one. So I'm going to hit on some basics. There's so much about training that you find online that I really won't go into training, but I can answer questions during the Q&A. Let me give a little back history. I was teaching in Japan from 1990 to 1996. And prior to that, from the 70s, I raised and trained dogs, mostly for companionship, and my friends' dogs for companionship. So when I went, and I'd never seen a Shiba before. So when I went to Japan in 1990, I saw my first Shiba. It was tied to its doghouse with a 6-foot leash. And as I walked past the house, it just stared at me, sitting like a little statue. And I thought, well, if this was an English Cocker or a Beagle that I've had in the past, it would be lunging at the end of its lead to get my attention or barking. And this dog was doing neither. It was just observing me, ever so tranquil. I thought, note to self, find out what breed this is, if it's a purebred. So because I had shown before, I got into showing at the Japanese Kennel Club shows, and I'd only see 1 or 2 Shibas amidst all the other breeds. But I made friends with a Japanese judge, and he introduced me to a Shiba breeder in my local area, which was around Nagoya. And Mr. Mori turned out to be my mentor for life. It was life-changing to have met him and learned what I did from him. And fast forward 30 years, and now I'm a Shiba breeder of merit and a judge of Shibas. And they continue to entertain me, this little enigma of a breed. I did some research and was wondering why the rise of Shibas since about the early 1990s. And even in Japan, they hadn't been that popular until about the 90s. Huskies were really popular in the 90s over there. But after the movie Hachiko came out, and all the anime movies with Shibas in them, then the Shiba popularity's been skyrocketing around the world. Now my Shiba friends on Facebook are from all parts of the world. It's wonderful to get together with people and share stories and like that. So I want to mention 3 different anime characters that you might want to check into, anime movies. And one is the Persona 3 series. The the Shiba is called Kodomaru. Do you know that one? Kodomaru. That Shiba has human-like intelligence. There's another one called Tobimaru, who is a hero, and he rises from the dead to save his master. Right? And then another one called Taromaru from the Gakko Gurashi series. And that's just very distinguished because it's not about an animal hero so much as the day-to-day life of a Shiba owner and their Shiba and the responsibilities that it takes to own one of these dogs. So for people considering Shibas, here's some background on Shibas. They're number one, a hunting dog. They're not a toy, even though they look like a little cute stuffed animal. And people do ride them around in baby carriages, which is hard to look at for me. But they're a hunting dog. 80% of them have a really good prey drive. So If you've got a cat, you just introduce it to the puppy when the cat has the advantage, when the puppy is little. And as a hunting dog, their hunting style is like a cat. You know, if you're walking your dog along a path and suddenly it freezes, it's heard or smelled or seen something that you haven't. And just don't be surprised if it just springs right up into the air and down into the bush and comes up with dirt all over its nose and holding a gopher. They hunt like that, or they just can catch birds out of the air. Little, unfortunately, unsuspecting birds. They're not a barker. And there's going to be exceptions to everything I say, you know, because the breed has a range of genetics. And so I'll be just talking about the middle of the road average. Okay, so they're not barkers. That wouldn't behoove them if they were needing to be a stealth hunter. So in your home, it's more common when somebody knocks on the door for them to just sit there on the other side of the door and see what's happening, see who that's going to be. So they could bark. Mine used to bark at garbage cans, but you can't expect them to be a watchdog. That's not what they were bred for. They could just watch the burglar come in and not bite him even. So don't get one if you want a watchdog. They're not, because they hunted solo, they're not a pack dog. You can have them around other dogs. They need to be socialized as puppies though. If you bring in an adult, like from a rescue or something that's been on its own alone as the only dog in the house, then you've got some work cut out for you, and obedience training to let the dog know what its limits are is going to be mandatory. And they can, starting young and being socialized and trained, they can learn to live well with other dogs. It just takes a lot out of you to be in supervising, let's just say. Let me see here. They're very loyal. They really, truly are. It's their heart, you know, to be so loyal. And one thing that just, you know, has led to them being a national treasure in Japan. The only thing is, being loyal doesn't mean you can let them out the front door and they'll come back readily, because they're likely to be stolen. You know, nowadays we breed Shibas to be friendly, even though they're a little aloof and it might be hard for someone to catch them. That's the big minus for letting your Shiba off leash. And if you have that proclivity, make sure your Shiba's microchipped and is wearing a tag that says he's microchipped, and along with an ID tag if you can. Some people that show Shibas don't put tags on their dogs. They are microchipped and everything like that, but I just want to remind everybody who shows to, at least while you're traveling and you can't control how everybody else drives, if you're in an accident through no fault of your own and your dog is loose, you know, worst case scenario is loose, running up and down the highway, having a tag with his numbers, which is getting back to you so fast, or somebody else, because he's connected to PetLink, and my other Shiba's connected to the American Kennel Club pet retrieval system. So when you travel, do the wise thing, because they are loyal. They will try to get back to you. But in an urban setting, it's really difficult. They're also loyal to their food dish. So beware, they can be very resource guarding and aggressive if another dog happens up on their food dish. It's been said that if they could speak, their first word would be mine. So that's kind of cute. Let's see. The activity of a Shiba, it's an active dog. It was a hunting dog, but it's also not a hyper dog. They usually, once they're back from their big walk or jog or whatever you do with them, then they snooze. Yeah, and they'll snooze all day like a regular dog. They have a certain composure that in the Japanese shows, the Nippo shows, that's the Japanese Preservation Society in Japan, their shows. The judges look for this intrinsic nobility in the head and the expression and a composure, not the very calm and noble looking. So that's what you're looking for in a Shiba. This is a very clean breed. They should have a guard coat. I don't know if you can see it, but it's spiky kind of on the outside and a little bit harsh. It should be. It's waterproof. The fur, the soft stuff is underneath the guard coat. And that's what makes them look like plush, because puppies don't have guard coat very much. When you get them home at 8 weeks old, they're going to have the beginning of their guard coat. They still could be really have a lot of the undercoat, like down on a baby bird. And that's what comes out when they shed. Bags full. The fluffier the Shiba, the more bags of undercoat come out. And if you keep your Shiba in the house all the time, it could shed all year long. It's not really reacting to sunlight and the natural cycle so much. So I like to try to keep mine outside a lot. He comes in at night, but that helps a lot. You got it, and then keeping them, let's see, about them cleaning themselves. Yeah, they have short ears, so their ears aren't gonna dangle down in the dog food. They don't have really long hair that's gonna get all tangled. They don't like mud. They don't like gooey mud. So you don't have to worry about, like a beagle or a big basset hound that would enjoy going through the mud. You don't have to worry about that with Shibas. But but a lot of them like water. I'll just tell a quick story. I had a Shiba that did not like water, and I used to throw his frisbee out kind of on the edge of the water to try to make him go in a little bit. And he would just paw the water, bring it to him. But one day a bunch of huskies were running loose. It was a big open dog park on the edge of the marina in Berkeley. The huskies jumped into the water and they started swimming kind of out into the bay. And Tom had jumped in and started swimming right along after them like a duckling. And I was so amused. This is, you just never know how they're going to surprise you. And there are some performance events nowadays that are made for Shibas. One is called Barn Hunt, where the rat is fully protected in a really thick PVC pipe with all kinds of air holes. And it's hid amongst bales of hay, and Shiba has to go find it in a certain length of time. And they're made for it. They just love it. It's a blast. And the rat's not hurt. After every run, a new rat is brought in, so they're not stressed. And another couple of events among so many is a new one called Fast Cat, where they have to run a 100-yard dash. and by themselves. So if they're dog aggressive, they can still have a blast because they're only chasing a baggie. And my Nikki thinks it's the real thing. So he, he goes right 20 miles an hour. Oh, nose work. Yeah, somebody brought in nose work. That's another really good one where they get to use their hunting ability. So there's so much fun to be had with these, especially if you like the idea of sports. And I show dogs, so I love that side of it. And that's a whole different world. That's wonderful. Let's see, we touched on that training. Okay, so to train a Shiba is easier than training a cat. But how much easier, it just depends on the luck of the draw. If you've got a real responsive Shiba that's food oriented, it's usually they learn really quick. But if you've got one who's can outsmart you or tries to outsmart you, you've got to head for a really competent trainer. Taiki here, I got the word across to him, but the owners had to follow up, and they took him to PetSmart and went through 3 courses now. So now they're back in the master's seat, and he knows it. So that's what you need to do. Get some help if you can't figure out what they're doing. And let's see. Being attentive goes along with the training. Oh, good. Yeah, some trainers don't like Shibas because they're too much of a challenge and they kind of are embarrassed. They get embarrassed in front of their other students. So just keep going until you find a trainer who loves challenges and is creative. Okay? We got to keep this in mind. Shibas have not been house pets very long at all. I'd say maybe 50 years. And when you consider how long DNA takes to mutate, how long it takes to mutate and change things, it's just been a nanosecond since Shibas were like farm dogs kept by people that hunted a lot and weren't expected to be cuddled and held. And so if you happen to have one who's a little more aloof and doesn't want to be restrained in a cuddle or something like that, think about them. It hasn't been that long since that has been made a demand on them. Let's see, health-wise, Shibas are very healthy, a very healthy dog. Probably the most common ailment I hear are allergies. And my dog can come back from a walk in the park licking his paws. And recently I've been told by my vet to put a solution of 1 part vinegar and 10 parts water on, and it does something to the pH in the skin. It seems to relieve them, but don't ask me anymore, okay? That just works for one dog. One common problem there's a few common problems, and ethical breeders will always check their breeding stock for hip dysplasia, patella, slippage, it's the knee in the back leg. Shibas were not and still are not x-rayed or checked for this very often. And also eyes are tested for glaucoma. They should be tested every couple of years if they're breeding stock for glaucoma or genetic defects of the eye. So anybody who breeds Shibas that wants to preserve this breed, make sure that they selectively breed dogs that can pass their health checks. I had Nikki's eyes tested last Monday for glaucoma because there's a genetic research study going on at the University of Pennsylvania now. And they said we see a lot of Shibas with glaucoma. So you must know those breeders are not testing their breeding stock because ethical breeders wouldn't produce puppies with glaucoma. Okay. I think I'm about at the end of it. Should we switch to Q&A, Yuko?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much,
Mhm.
Mary Beth. That was very helpful. It's interesting how you talk about how Shiba, it hasn't been long for Shiba to become house pets. As a matter of fact, when I was growing up in Japan, rarely did I see Shibas inside the house. They were always outside the house. And thus, rarely did I see Shiba that would come up to you and cuddle or want to be cuddled. I think it's big part, their temperament, their breed, they are hunter dogs to start with, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you're right. I mean, when I was a kid, I don't think people expected them to be cuddly like the house kind of dogs. And this is changing. Even in Japan, I believe it is changing. So very, very interesting. I think I am a dog owner myself, unfortunately not a Shiba. I did have a Shiba when I was growing up, actually. And I now have I personally have a Shih Tzu mix. And there is a lot to say about breed, right? They are, from what I understand, Shih Tzus originally were lap dogs for the Chinese royalties. So they are my Shih Tzu is very different from the Shiba that I had because naturally they were raised differently. Their genetics are different.
Worst case scenario.
They know how to tell you that you are treating me not the way I want to be treated. So thank you, Mary Beth, for this. We have actually lots of questions, both publicly, and I've gotten a lot directly to my private chats. But first and foremost, the first question is, what are some of the color variants, or, are they all a certain color? Is one color an official color versus the other?
There's like 4 colors that you see, and then you see variations. Genetically, they can, so the most popular color is red. The most desired shade of red is bright red orange. They can vary all the way to a deep red, like that. They all should have the white markings called urajiro. That can be anywhere from cream to bright white. So you have the reds, you have the black and tans, which is a tricolor actually, because it's got the white markings, but it's got black and then tan spots and tan various places on its body. And then you have a sesame. A red sesame is registerable with the American Kennel Club and the Japanese Kennel Club. Red sesame is a red with a black overlay, lightly sprinkled, no patches, like a beagle on the back, but lightly sprinkled over the red. If you looked at one of the hairs, it would be divided into 3 parts. You would have the red, black, black tip, red, and then the very soft undercoat, which is a creamier color. The black and tan cannot be pure black. It has to have an undercoat. I'm talking show dogs, or the dogs that the Japanese Preservation Society standard goes for, the NIPO standard, and the kennel clubs affiliated with FCI, the rest of the world other than AKC as FCI. They want a lighter undercoat, rusty red or gray. under the, not rusty red, but a lighter reddish, rusty kind of color under that black and tan. And then we have a cream, which is a dilute of the red, and it's not an albino. The pigment around the eye and nose can look liver, or they can be black. An albino, be all pink pigment. These can be shown in various countries of the world, but they can't be shown in at Japan shows or the US shows. They're awful cute though. They're in a lot of anime.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and then there's various shades. Sometimes when you mix colors, you can get an overlay over the red that's not complete sesame. It's called sashige, and it's just a little sprinkling over the top.
Now, we do have a question. Is a white Shiba possible?
Oh yeah. Remember I said the white markings can be cream color or white. So can the white ones. They can be a brighter white or a creamier white. And some of them have apricot tips kind of on their ears.
Interesting, wonderful. We have another question that says, I know that Dobermans have a high coefficient of inbreeding, and therefore there is a need to outcross with other breeds in order to save them from genetic conditions. Is there a similar inbreeding problem with Shibas in Japan or in the United States if they're not crossbred often?
Not to the life or death issues, like I know of a situation with Dalmatians back in the, was it 70s, 80s. They had such a liver problem that genetically inherited that they outcrossed. The parent club allowed outcrossing to pointers and then brought that line back in, and that saved the breed, literally. Shibas don't have that life or death issues. The gene pool was very small after the war. In research, it shows that there were maybe 3 lines, different families of Shibas that were interbred. So we have to always be on the lookout. That's what selective breeding is. You breed the strongest, best looking to the best you can find. And that's why unethical breeders that don't bother, they're just looking for the bottom line dollar sign, are to be run from, because they're not doing selective breeding. They're just breeding whatever they have.
With that, another question's that's saying, how can you make sure you're getting a good Shiba?
So you need to interview the people, the breeders. They're going to be members of a preservation group. They're going to be members of their national club or a regional club. And they've got proof. You can go on to the OFA site. It's called the Orthopedic Foundation for Animals, and look up the test results of their breeding stock. All you have to do is ask for the sire and dam's AKC number. And then you can find out if they've passed all their tests. The hips, the knees, the eyes, minimum. If they can't do that, then they're not doing those tests. Or they have done them and the dog failed. And so you've got to double check,
So a little shift in the question. You've mentioned that they're not a pack dog earlier. How are they with cats or with children?
I've heard mostly good stories. The best are the ones that start early. And like I said, when the cat is bigger than the puppy, that helps. And then I've had incidences where I've brought in a 5-month-old Shiba from Japan, and the cat lived on top of the cabinets in their house for a couple months, I think. They eventually tolerated each other.
Interesting.
Start early.
Now that leads me to my next question of, and I also see in the comment that you really need to understand the breed to really figure out if this dog breed is the right match for your particular family, right? With that said, we also had another question that said, you know, given that Shibas are better trained when they are younger, what are some of the precautions I should have if I want to adopt a Shiba at an older age?
Well, you have to look at yourself and say, do I have a lot of patience? Do I love this dog no matter what? That dog had to figure out what the world was about very young. And most of the time, dogs that are given up never got the investment in time and guidance that they should have. So they had to make up the rules, you know, and so you have to respect that. And it might take longer, not necessarily because it's an old dog and you can't teach old dog new tricks, but it just means that you might have to get some help if you need it. You might have to compromise. Like, why would I bother training Taiki to shake hands if he doesn't want me to grab his hand? You know, Nikki so like needs my love. He goes, here, have both. They're so different, you know? So I compromise and there's a lot of other things Taiki can do.
That actually is a great way to lead into this nice question of that says, Mary Beth, what are the 3 qualities that make you just absolutely say, Shiba is my breed?
Well, I've had a lot of different breeds, mostly from the sporting dog group and the hound group. I love a challenge. I love a dog that can outsmart me because he brings out my need to get creative and think about that dog rather than what I want out of it. You know, what does he need? So it's a challenge. And as a trainer, I love challenges. I love the fact, this is so important to me. I love the fact that they're very patient and calm. Like I'm busy for long hours doing work and they're just patient. They wait. They don't destroy stuff after they're adults and they have things to chew on. They shouldn't, if they're well-bred, shouldn't have a lot of nervous energy. If they do, then maybe one of their needs isn't being met, you know, like exercise or something. I do love that composed, noble feeling. Yeah.
Yes. You remind me when I had my Shiba, needy was definitely not a word that I would ever need to use for my Shiba, you know, versus sometimes my current Shih Tzu mix, needy could be a word to describe her, but with Shiba, never. It was needy was not an adjective that I would ever use.
Right. No Velcro dog here.
Actually, that leads me to yet another question, a little bit related to your life when you were in Japan. The question asks you, have you had experience with other Japanese, native Japanese breeds, such as the Akita dog?
No, only visiting kennels. Excuse me. I never was around any of the other breeds, except, you know, at the Nippo shows, which I still go to once a year, minus last year. There's quite a few Shikoku and Kishu, and a handful of Kaiken, but the Akita-ken have their own preservation society, Kozonkai, and I never went to one of those.
So that's a great point, actually. I think when you are not familiar with Japanese native dogs, a lot of people think of Shiba-Ken and Akita-Ken as one and the same, and they're very different, aren't they?
Well, yeah, they were bred to hunt different things. So, I mean, when you go to a Nippo show in Japan, first of all, when in the 90s, when I went up to about 2013, there were about 500 to 600 Shibas only. And that was one of the days of the weekend. The other day was for the other breeds. And always on the day where the Kishu and Shikoku and Kai were judged, you heard snarls all day long as they were sparring from afar, social distanced. But the snarls and all that stuff. And the Shiba Day was very calm. Occasionally you would see one get out of control, but they should be under the control of the owner. The Japanese judges have 3 words that what they're looking for in a Shiba. They want kan-i, which is a kind of a bold, composed look. And they want ryosei, which is a dog who is obedient, attentive to their master. So if they do seem a little aggressive, the owner can check that and get them right back under control. And then the other one is saboku, which is a natural simplicity. This dog should never be trimmed to make it look like a little Pomeranian. Should never be trimmed. And it, it should have a simple, balanced beauty to itself.
I love that word. Soboku is how I would pronounce it, but soboku, yes, definitely. Shibas are really, no, you do not groom them or cut them in a certain way. They are very soboku. Yes, I agree. Actually, a little bit of a question related to Japan and breeders in Japan. Have you ever bred with anyone in Japan? Do breeders in Japan do health checks the same way they do in the United States for their Shibas?
95% don't. I'm hoping that's going to change. In fact, I worked with a genetic disease control for dogs back in the 90s to bring over somebody from OFA to teach this one consortium of vets how to do radiography for hip dysplasia. And the people that went to the clinic and the seminar were Bernese Mountain Dog people who have big problem with hip dysplasia. So that actually, and I double checked just recently to see how many vets would do OFAs in the Nagoya area. And I was happy to hear about 5 vets do. So that's changing. If you want to import from Japan, you will probably be asked by the breeder to pay for those health checks, those x-rays and stuff like that. And then they'll gladly do it. But something that they don't, they rely on observation to see if the dog has a problem. But a lot of times these patellas are from the joint not being, a good joint, and that's genetic. So when you import, be careful.
Another Japan related question. So this question says, I had the impression when you think of animals in Japan that the cat was the biggest, sort of most popular animal in Japan. Is that true, or a misconception? Or how do cats and dogs play out in Japan?
I think urban areas around the world, more and more people are missing that natural link with the natural life, and they want pets. And so cats are not favored over dogs in Japan. But it's common for somebody to want a pet anywhere. It's an urban area, because that kind of dehumanizes you. You need to be close to nature somehow, and animals are a good way to do it.
I think you have answered this question already, but there is a question about, you know, how poodles are crossbred, and there's like the Labradoodle and something doodle and something doodle. Are
Mhm.
Shibas? Are there any particular crossbreeding that it's official in that with Shibas?
Here's my body language. Okay, so Shibas were interbred. I mean, that's why there's height disqualifications, because we want the Shiba to stay a small breed and the Shikoku to be the next up and the next up. But they were mixed at one time. And then just used depending on who their, you know, who could do what best. The smaller dog was better for the birds, and wild boars and deer were better for the larger ones, and bear for Akita. But okay, so here's my opinion about doodleizing anything. Sure, it's great to have a dog that doesn't shed. And all purebreds were hybrids at one time or more, a mix of more than one. But at least preservation breeders who care about the future of their breed are doing health checks. They're having an affiliation with a regional or national club produces peer pressure to keep you honest. You know, you're in it to preserve the breed for all time, and it has to stay healthy to do that. And people that just do the designer dog thing should have OFA checks that you can check up on online at OFA.
Actually, the next question is a little bit related to that, and I think we already know your answer, but what are your thoughts about the Taiwanese breeding a smaller version of a Shiba that they are often called the bean Shiba?
Okay, so the Japanese word for that is mame, Shiba.
Mame Shiba, yes.
Mame means bean. So my mentor is doing that right now.
Ooh.
And I've been to his kennel. It's spotless. He has attendants taking care of the dogs. It's immaculate. You got to look at the poodle with its 3 sizes, the dachshund with its 2 sizes, and other breeds that have a small and a large, or whatever they want to call them. And they've miniaturized. And we have now an accepted American Shepherd that's a miniaturized Australian Shepherd. So again, that process is for purpose. People live in smaller places. It's convenient. All I say is just be a preservation breeder and breed only the healthiest and the best temperament. Yeah, because that's going to continue to happen.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Talking about a little bit of breeding and crossbreeding. When you crossbreed, are you doubling up on the maladies?
Absolutely. Both, you know, poodles are known to have epilepsy issues, hip dysplasia issues, missing teeth issues, all that stuff. And so you're just mixing that in. And so more health checks need to be checked instead of just, if you've got a doodle, you've got to think about the health checks that you're going to add on top of what poodles need to be health checked against.
So I always say this, I seem to be saying this at the end when we come close to the end of the program every time. Time flies when we're having a great conversation. And unfortunately, this could be the last question, but I think this is a good question. It says, we've been talking about the characteristics of the Shiba breed. In your mind, what are the good characteristics of a Shiba owner?
Patient. They have to have patience. And a good sense of humor, I think. to put up with some of the idiosyncrasies that you're gonna have. You know, like a female dog I had one time, she just freaked out at garbage cans. And, you know, Tuesday night before garbage day, they'd line the street and Ranchan would just be crazy that night, barking at him over the picture window in the front room. So I think so. A good sense of humor.
And somebody said in chat, flexibility.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And
But this is it, you know, matching the Shiba with your personality. You really have to know what you want.
yes, and also somebody said, and willingness to learn from your Shiba.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you want a cuddly dog, let's say you have no family, you live alone, and you really lack that physical contact, you need a cuddly dog. You know, and some Shibas will give you some cuddles, but not for hours. So you're going to be disappointed. Don't make that mistake. Do your homework.
This has been wonderful, Betsy. Thank you so much. I think not only have we learned about the Shiba, the breed, but I think you've really touched on a lot of responsible ownership of dogs. To your point, you need to find the right breed for you. What are you looking for in a breed? And to your point, if you're looking for a cuddly dog, that's probably not necessarily a Shiba dog. Thank you again, Mary Beth, for spending the time with us.
It was my pleasure.
Oh, thank you. And thank you everybody for coming. I always feel that you are what makes all of our programs wonderful and so very worth working hard for. And we are so very, very happy that we were able to connect Mary Beth with this beautiful audience that is in front of us today.